Chris Hemsworth was born on August 11, 1983, in the capital of sunny Australia, Melbourne. The boy's family was the simplest. His mother, Leonie, was an English teacher, and his father, Craig Hemsworth, was a social services counselor. Parents of Chris's mom immigrated to Australia, so Leonie has Dutch and Irish descent. Chris inherited English, Scottish, and German ancestry from his father. Chris became the second, but not the last child of the couple. He has an older brother, Luke, and a younger one, Liam Hemsworth. In the future, they will also act in films. Chris spent a lot of time outside the bustling metropolis, living in the outback in Bulman, Northern Territory. Chris's studies were not going well because of the moves. He entered Heathmont College High School, but the boy did not have time to study there so long. Soon, the family moved again, first to Bulman and a couple of years later to Phillip Island. Chris's youth, who was 15 years old at the time of the move, was spent in that heavenly place. For a while, Chris was very keen on sewing. Anything that could attract his attention was a great lesson, particularly for his parents. One moment, he thought he would be a designer of his clothes. The next moment, he wanted to become a professional boxer. And after a while, he thought he would become a lawyer or a doctor. According to him, he is inspired by different things. That's probably why Chris chose acting. Like true Australians, the Hemsworth brothers devoted all their free time to sports, swimming, and of course, surfing. That helped an ordinary teenager to turn into a tall, muscular, handsome man. And with such a torso, the way to the cinema is open. Chris has been acting out scenes with his brothers since childhood, although he did it not seriously but for fun. Over time, his desire was strengthened and materialized into quite real and achievable dreams to act in films and become a famous Australian actor, recognized in the world as his idols Heath Ledger and Naomi Watts. Therefore, by the age of majority, young Chris, together with his brothers, began to go to film auditions and declare himself. When Chris turned 18, he began his acting career, playing several minor roles in television series. The first appearances on the screen were playing the role of King Arthur in the 2002 TV series Guinevere Jones, an appearance in the soap opera Neighbours, and in one series of martial law. It was the first and very intense movie experience that Chris himself remembers like this.
First job I booked was on a show called Neighbours, which is a famous Australian TV show. Basically, one of the lead characters had been robbed in a cafe, and I had to come in and say, "What's going on? Quick, call the police," and call the police. That was my big moment.
In 2004, the actor auditioned for the role of Robbie Hunter in the Australian soap opera Home and Away. He failed the audition, but was immediately given the role of Kim Hyde. Having agreed, Chris went to Sydney, where he was supposed to join the cast. At that time, he did not think that he would star in 171 series of the project and would leave it only in July of 2007. Chris did not regret the end of work on the series at all. "How happy I was when I got into that project," Chris recalls in one of his interviews, and how quickly nothing has left of that happiness. And although Home and Away made Chris more notable and popular, working on a soap opera did not bring him respect in the film industry. At the same time, Chris took part in the 5th season of Dancing with the Stars Australia, where his partner was a professional dancer, Abby Ross. Chris was off the show after the 6th week, but the most interesting thing was that it almost cost him one important future role. The producers of the upcoming franchise were afraid that the actor would lose fan love. In the same 2007, Chris suddenly realized that the level of Australian television was not up to American and was unlikely to offer him something new. Therefore, he made a risky decision to move to the United States, and it was not anywhere but to Los Angeles. Chris studied American English at the Screenwise Film and TV School for Actors in Sydney. Therefore, there were no difficulties with moving. In Hollywood, the star of the Australian TV series was accepted as a native, and he got a place in the cast of the large-scale J.J. Abrams film Star Trek. He got the role of Captain Kirk's father in the first scenes of the film.
Sir, they're locked on our signal. They're launching again. Bravo 6 maneuver fire full.
It was Chris's first major project, and a successful one in fact. Abrams praised the actor's performance. And Josh Tyler, Cinema Blend co-founder, was impressed with Hemsworth, calling the scene featuring the actor the best 5 minutes I've spent in a movie theater this year. In the same year, Chris starred with Mila Jovovich in the thriller A Perfect Getaway, although the actor himself got the supporting role of Cale Garrity. The film was not a great success, but critics praised Chris's acting by calling it an appropriately intimidating performance of a thuggish backpacker. In 2010, Chris appeared in the film Cash together with the English actor Sean Bean. The director of the film, Stephen Milburn Anderson, recalled how he first saw Chris Hemsworth at a film audition for the project. He was in the States only for a month and a half at that moment. After the release of the picture, in November, The Hollywood Reporter called Chris one of the young actors who was pushing or being pushed to A-list of Hollywood, where he would really get there soon. In addition, that year brought Chris success in his personal life. The actor's previous relationship lasted 3 years and ended back in 2008. Then, Hemsworth met his partner in the film Home and Away, Australian actress Isabel Lucas. After moving to America, Chris was not up to relationships. However, in early of 2010, his talented agent William Ward, organizing a party to meet actors with producers and directors, invited actress Elsa Pataky. Elsa sympathized with Chris, and the couple almost immediately struck up a conversation. Soon, that communication turned into a relationship, which became known to the public by September of that year when the couple appeared together on the red carpet. Their relationship evolved very quickly, and at Christmas, the couple went on a joint vacation for the holidays to Indonesia, taking their parents with them. It was at that moment that the couple got married unexpectedly for everyone. It was a surprise even for their agent. Later, Chris and Elsa got the same tattoos. The couple got 5 runic alphabet characters corresponding to the letters C, E, I, T, and S, which represented their family. Hemsworth wrote the letter C on Pataky's ring finger, and she wrote the letter E on his finger. The following year was a turning point for Chris and a fundamental one in his career. Many producers and studios became interested in him. For example, Sony Pictures offered Chris Hemsworth to play the main role in the thriller Shadowrunner, but the project was never put into production. At the same time, actor and director Kenneth Branagh became interested in Chris. He chose him to play a role in a project that not only launched Chris's career, but became the most important one in the actor's career, bringing him worldwide popularity and love. 2011, Marvel Cinematic Universe had already released the failed film The Incredible Hulk and 2 parts of the extremely successful Iron Man. The studio was looking for an actor to play the main role of the god Thor in the superhero movie Thor: God of Thunder. There were many contenders: Channing Tatum, Suede, Alexander Skarsgård, WWE wrestling legend Paul Levesque, and even Chris's younger brother Liam Hemsworth. Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, and Leonardo DiCaprio were also interested in the role, but the director wanted to take a little-known actor. The final choice for the actor for the role of Thor fell on the Hemsworth brothers. Chris had no ill will towards Liam and was rooting for him to get the role. He thought it was funny. It's also funny that Chris was born on Thursday, the day of the week named after the god Thor. Chris later said that if it weren't for the role of Thor, the God of Thunder, he could have thrown his career away. Chris's partners in the film were Natalie Portman, Anthony Hopkins, and Tom Hiddleston, who auditioned for the role of Thor but got the role of Loki, Thor's sworn brother and the god of mischief. Over time, meeting on the same set from movie to movie, the actors would become really close friends, and Chris would call Tom his 4th brother.
Could you handle being brothers in real life, the 2 of you?
We are.
Yes, we are.
We've adopted him into the Hemsworth family. He's the 4th member of the brothers.
Honorary Hemsworth, yeah.
Chris fit perfectly into the role of Thor, even though he had to work hard and get into the right shape for that. Chris stubbornly worked out and gained about 20 pounds of muscle mass before the start of filming. He stuck to a diet of eggs, chicken, vegetable sandwiches, rice, steaks, protein shakes, and had a 6-month regimen of going to the gym. He had 4 days of grueling workouts a week. During the day, Chris pumped iron in the gym, and in the evening, he surfed, boxed, or ran for several hours and had only 1 day to recover. By the way, his understudy, Bobby Holland, worked hard too, because he had to perform all the most difficult tricks of Chris. If it was enough for Hemsworth to look cool, Bobby had up to 18 hours of training every day. Prior to that role, the actor had nothing to do with heavy sports. Like many Australians, he was fond of surfing and swimming. Such a lifestyle developed endurance in him, which in turn helped him to withstand an intensive course of training and achieve such an impressive physical shape.
Oh my god. Is he okay?
He's fine, not injured at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, my friend.
When Chris Hemsworth and Sir Anthony Hopkins first saw each other in full armor, Hopkins said, "God, there's no acting required here, is there?" In their joint quarrel scene, when Chris yells at Anthony Hopkins, the director asked Hopkins to improvise his reaction. As a result, many people present on the set shed a tear. The film had several reshoots and some scenes were cut. Thanks to this, there are enough additional scenes and just funny moments on the web.
Thank you.
Now give us a kiss.
Stop.
The premiere of the film was on May 6, 2011. The film was expected to be a box office success. It grossed $449.3 million worldwide, and critics praised the actor's acting, music, visual effects, and everything except the plot. Hemsworth was named one of the fun and fearless men by Cosmopolitan magazine and gained great popularity among Marvel fans.
With the Thor.
Well, yeah, and they
Got
use
some?
Thor as... I think we have some.
Here we
There's
go.
Thorial.
That's
That's a really good one.
that's my hair commercial.
Thanks to such results, a sequel was announced, the filming of which would begin quite soon. But first, Chris had to join the star ensemble in the superhero blockbuster The Avengers. The idea of the film appeared back in 2003, but the first development began only a couple of years later. The team of creators had gathered just a wonderful cast. It was a truly stellar cast of the saviors of humanity, which the audience will love for a whole decade to come. Hemsworth had to increase his food intake again in order to maintain the physique he had built for Thor. The diet consisted of chicken breasts, fish, steaks, and eggs every day. Chris later said that he had to consume body weight in grams of protein. A couple of years later, Tom Hiddleston told in The Late Show with Stephen Colbert that Chris Hemsworth actually hit him for real in one of the scenes.
Where Thor had to strike Loki across the face, and I was wearing the horns, which weigh about 30 pounds. And I couldn't really sell the hit.
The smack, yeah.
The smack. So I just said to Chris, I think you should just hit me in the face.
Imagine how heavily Chris can punch. He's still Thor. Interestingly, according to Tom in an interview with The Guardian, at the beginning of the production, the film was codenamed Group Hug. The premiere of the film was in the spring of 2012 and made a splash. The Avengers had received numerous awards and nominations, including Oscar and BAFTA nominations for achievements in the field of visual effects. The film has earned more than $1.5 billion at the worldwide box office, setting numerous box office records, including breaking the record of The Dark Knight as the highest-grossing comic book film. It became the third most profitable film of all time at the time of release and the highest-grossing film of 2012.
No hard feelings, Point Break. You got a mean swing.
Chris didn't have time to rest from filming. The second solo film about the God of Thunder was already in the works. Filming took place from September to December, mainly in Surrey, England, as well as London and Iceland. Iceland was chosen for the setting of the dark world of Svartalheim because of its black volcanic landscapes. Svartalheim literally means home of the Black Elves in Old Norse. Chris Hemsworth has been growing his wonderful hair for more than a year to make it more real and longer. He didn't want to use the wig that he had to wear in Thor. At that time, about 30 hammers of different weights were made for Thor for various purposes. The main hammer was made of aluminum and then reproduced from other materials with different weights, including a soft version for stunts. 5 versions of the 30 were most often used, including the illuminated hammer, which simulated the glow from lightning strikes. There were enough funny moments and failed takes on the set again. For example, Natalie Portman, who played the role of Dr. Jane Foster, slapped Chris about 30 times. She didn't want to hurt him and gave him a false slap, take after take, which looked unrealistic. In the end, she gave him a real slap in the face, which got into the movie.
Jane.
Sorry, I just needed to make sure you were real. It's been a very strange day.
I am. Jane,
And in the scene of a passionate kiss with Natalie Portman at the end of the film, Chris chose to kiss his wife, Elsa Pataky, who wore a wig and replaced Natalie for one scene. The premiere of the film Thor: The Dark World was in the fall of 2013. The picture was again a commercial success, earning more than the first part. However, critics, although praising the game of Hemsworth and Hiddleston, were dissatisfied with the typical villain and the lack of depth. Then Thor reappeared on the screen, not alone, but with friends in Avengers: Age of Ultron. That time, they were fighting an artificial intelligence, Ultron, obsessed with the idea of destroying humanity. The cast was replenished with a couple of new faces. Elizabeth Olsen played the role of Wanda, and Aaron Taylor Johnson played the role of Quicksilver. By the way, Chris Hemsworth was Aaron's favorite superhero. He was pleasantly surprised by Chris's physical form. The premiere of the film was in the spring of 2015. Critics were pleased, and the box office grossed over $1.4 billion worldwide, becoming the 4th highest-grossing film of that year and the 5th highest-grossing film of all time. Chris also received a fee of $5 million for the film and People's Choice Awards in the category of Favorite Action Movie Actor, where Robert Downey Jr. was nominated too.
All right, so if I lift it, I then rule Asgard?
Yes, of course.
I will be reinstituting Prima Nocta. Be right back.
After taking a short break for other projects, Chris returned to the solo story of Thor in the 3rd part of the series, Thor Ragnarok. The sequel was directed by Taika Waititi, who brought his author's sense of humor and a special approach to the film. Thanks to that, the actors often improvised. He wanted to show Chris Hemsworth's comedic talent, claiming that he's so good and underutilized in that department. Chris was legitimately one of the funniest things in that film. The actor's fee had grown to $15 million. Chris had to gain weight again for the role of Thor. He had to follow a strict diet, exercise 6 to 7 times a week, and consume about 6,000 calories a day. So he gained about 22 pounds of muscle mass and weighed more than 198 pounds. In addition to Chris, his older brother Luke also starred in that part, who played the role of an actor parodying Thor. The principal photography of the film took place in Brisbane and Sydney, Australia. The premiere of Thor Ragnarok was in the fall of 2017. The film received a lot of enthusiastic reactions and critical praise. Moreover, many considered it the best part of the series about Thor. It grossed $854 million, becoming the highest-grossing film of the trilogy starring Chris. Then, work on the 4th part was started.
Let's see who you are. I take off your disguise. And flick!
Oh. You flipped too hard, damn it!
Meanwhile, Chris managed to appear in 2 more Avengers team races, starring in Avengers Infinity War and the final part of Avengers Endgame saga. By that time, all the actors had already become relatives to each other and perfectly sensed each other's mood and energy. Chris became very close friends with Chris Evans and Chris Pratt after he joined the superhero squad.
How did they set you guys apart, being Chris and Chris? Did they call you Thor and Mr. Captain America?
Chris
or?
1, Chris 2.
I think it was Chris 1,
Chris
2.
Chris 2. They were like, where's Chris 1? Where's the best
I think
Chris?
they called you Chris.
In one scene, Chris Hemsworth and Chris Evans improvised a dialogue between Thor and Captain America, in which they compared their facial hair, believing that they had known each other long enough to have such friendly banter. Another fun fact was that for a while, Chris was buying alcohol for Tom Holland. Don't worry, there was nothing illegal. It was just that Tom, for some reason, constantly did not take documents with him to bars, so during hangouts with his partners in the Avengers, Chris had to buy him a drink because he looks too young. Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal praised the image of the actor, calling him as the graceful, exuberant comic actor he was destined to be, while Thor morphs alarmingly and charmingly, yet still heroically, into a beer-bellied apparition who could pass for Jeff Lebowski.
Oh my god! Oh my god, it's so good to see you!
The final part was filmed in parallel with Avengers Infinity War and was completely shot in 200 days. Avengers Infinity War premiered in the spring of 2018, and Avengers Endgame was a year later. The films have shown incredibly successful results, pleasing critics and grossing record-breaking, huge box offices worldwide. Avengers Endgame was the first film to gross more than $1 billion in its first weekend alone. The total fees amounted to $2 billion for the first and almost $2.8 billion for the second film. The image of Thor made Chris a superstar. Despite the tight schedule, the actor managed to save his marriage. Elsa Pataky, in an interview with Vogue Australia in 2018, talked about her relationship with Chris. She wasn't sure if their marriage wouldn't break up early because of Chris's hard work, but they loved each other and found a way to keep it. Chris quickly gained popularity and fan love, having first appeared in the image of Thor. But he really did not want to become an actor of one role and be forever remembered only by it. Therefore, he immediately tried to play in other projects that were far from comics. In parallel with Thor, he starred in the comedy horror film The Cabin in the Woods, which was released only in the spring of 2012 due to financial problems.
Run! Fucking run! Ah! Dead bitch!
Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon developed about 60 species of creatures for the film. The script was written in just 3 days and made fun of the slasher genre, although it did not differ in particular depth. However, the film and Chris's acting had positive reviews from critics. Allison Foreman of Mashable described it as his sexiest role yet. Hemsworth later co-starred with Kristen Stewart in the film Snow White and the Huntsman, playing the role of the huntsman.
But you have a deal.
He became friends with both Charlize Theron and Kristen Stewart, despite the fact that the girl accidentally gave him a shiner on his face. Despite its commercial success with $396 million in fees, the film received mixed reviews. Critics did not like the chemistry of Hemsworth and Stewart's characters, and some even referred to the weak development of the characters. At that moment, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer came across unedited footage of a scene from the cabin in the woods. Chris was chosen and invited to play the role of Jed Eckert in the 2012 Red Dawn remake. The film failed, although by that time the world already saw the actor in the image of Thor, which provided him a soft pillow and saved him from career regression. In 2013, Hemsworth appeared in Ron Howard's sports drama Rush in the role of 1976 Formula One world champion James Hunt. Chris auditioned for the role of James Hunt during the filming of the movie The Avengers, and so impressed Ron Howard that he was immediately given the role. The guy, who at the time in the image of Thor weighed 216 pounds, lost 30 pounds for the sake of that role. His partner in the film was the German actor Daniel Bruhl, who played Niki Lauda. The actors were not allowed to drive a real Formula One car, so instead they had to use Formula 3 cars with a fake body. The historical rivalry on the screen had some creative challenges, but despite the fact that the truth had to be distorted, the film was warmly received by most of the demanding critics, namely the Formula One industry, including Niki Lauda himself. In the same year, Chris took 7th place in Glamour magazine's 50 Sexiest Men list, right after his younger brother Liam Hemsworth. By the time I was dubbed Mr. Sexy, I was already happily married, Chris admits, so I didn't receive any dividends from this title. However, a couple of times I still found a use for it. For example, when my wife demanded that I go wash the dishes, I squared my shoulders and said, "How can you make the sexiest man on the planet stand at the sink?" Elsa, of course, was surprised, and I, taking advantage of her confusion, managed to get away. However, unfortunately, that trick didn't work the second time. That period of time was especially joyful for Chris. In May of 2012, the actor became a father for the first time. Chris and Elsa had a daughter, India Rose Hemsworth, and 2 years later, they had twin boys, Tristan and Sasha Hemsworth. The actor bought a property in his native Australia near the city of Byron Bay for $7 million. And in the same 2014, he was selected by People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. Chris is a loving and attentive father. For him, the best thing after a hard day on set is to play with his kids. After the birth of their children, Elsa decided to prioritize not her professional future, but her family. She reasoned that 2 movie stars in the family would not have the best effect on the upbringing of children. However, there were rumors that Chris insisted on her giving up her career, and Elsa herself was not ready to devote her whole life only to children. Once, the paparazzi managed to capture on camera a moment of Chris and Elsa's quarrel on one of the beaches of Australia. The girl was furiously sorting out the relationship, raising her voice and waving her arms. The media immediately reported that the marriage was on the verge of collapse. Insiders reported that such quarrels between husband and wife arose due to disagreements on the basis of a woman's career. The famous actor dreamed of his wife being at home and raising children. It's hard to say if that was true or just another media speculation. We can only say that after the birth of their children, Elsa still continues to act in films, although not as actively as before. She and Chris even played in the same movie. It was the military drama 12 Strong, and they were not just anyone but a married couple. In 2015, Chris appeared in the Michael Mann-directed action film Black Hat. His partner in the project was Viola Davis. The picture failed, and critics were concerned about the discrepancy between Chris's appearance and the appearance of a typical hacker. Chris agreed with that statement, replying that he himself did not really like what he was performing in that film. It just looked cardboard. He said it was an attempt to do what he thought people might have wanted to see. but he doesn't think he is good in that space. At that moment, the actor appeared in a cameo role of Home and Away, though he was not in the image of his past character. 2015 turned out to be very busy for projects because in addition to the continuation of The Avengers, Chris agreed to star in 3 more projects and took them all seriously, giving his best every time. Among them was the comedy Vacation, for which he was nominated for MTV Movie Awards for Best Kiss with Leslie Mann. And there was In the Heart of the Sea, based on the book of the same name by Nathaniel Philbrick.
It's all I know.
In an interview with Jimmy Kimmel Live, Chris said that in order to prepare for the role of starving sailors, the actors were put on a diet of 500 to 600 calories a day. By the end of filming, he weighed only 176 pounds, having dropped 33 pounds. Such work exhausted the actor. Sometimes he almost fainted being in the frame. But Chris received a nomination for Choice Movie Actor, Action at the 18th Teen Choice Awards. Obviously, Hemsworth gathered his wife and children, and the family left for his native Australia, tired of filming in noisy Hollywood. He said the move had benefited his wife and his 3 children, and it was the children, according to him, who helped in general to think about other things besides his acting career. Chris revealed that when he was not working, he often sits at home and waits for his kids to come home and give a hug and tell him they love him. The actor built a huge mansion on a previously purchased plot. On the site of 3 Balinese-style villas, about 5.9 acres of vegetation, including some endemic species, were cleared and a house worth $20 million was erected. The mansion had 6 bedrooms, a gym, a home theater, game rooms for children, a 164-foot swimming pool on the roof, and outdoor terraces. And the neighbors jokingly called it Hemsworth Castle. The family often spends time together and has fun with the children.
My daughter and my nieces painted everybody's nails, so I actually had my nails painted as well. It was around Christmas time.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah. That's what happens when you get a bunch of young girls together. They put lipstick on you and paint your face and paint your nails. And
in 2016, Chris played the role of Eric the Huntsman in The Huntsman Winter's War, which became a prequel to Snow White and the Huntsman. His partner in the film was Jessica Chastain, who performed his beloved. The film was not liked by critics and shown to be worse than the first part. At the same time, Chris joined the cast of the remake of the movie Ghostbusters, performing the role of receptionist Kevin. The actor received high praise from critics and won at the Kids' Choice Awards for Favorite Movie Actor. But the film itself failed again. That's really what hadn't failed all that time, so those are projects with the participation of Thor. After Ragnarok and The Avengers won the Teen Choice Awards for Choice Sci-Fi Movie Actor, Chris starred in the neo-noir thriller film Bad Times at the El Royale, playing the supporting role of Billy Lee.
Is he here with us now?
The film wanted to awaken nostalgia for noir in the audience and thus stand out from the rest, but did not receive much box office success. Perhaps the reason for that was the R rating. However, it doesn't matter anymore. Chris played with Jeff Bridges, Cynthia Erivo, and Dakota Johnson, and the film received many awards and nominations, in particular at the 45th Saturn Awards. He soon appeared in the spin-off series Men in Black, titled Men in Black International. His partner in the film was Tessa Thompson. The film received mediocre reviews. Critics complained about lackluster action and forgettable plots, but praised the chemistry between Chris and Tessa.
Let's go old school. But this one...
The following year, Hemsworth starred in the Netflix action thriller Extraction. And finally, it was met positively and even broke the service's record for the number of views. The film stood out for its staging and choreography of action scenes that kept the viewer in suspense from the beginning to the very end. It is already known that Chris will return to his role as Tyler Rake in Extraction 2. The project is already in development. In addition to it, another project is in development. It's Mad Max Fury Road spin-off Furiosa. And soon, the continuation of the Thor series about Chris Hemsworth, Thor: Love and Thunder, will be released on the screens. Now, Chris's capital is $130 million. Most of his earnings and equity he gets from his work on Marvel films. Since moving to America, Hemsworth has become one of the highest-paid actors in the world. Additionally, he receives some income for shooting and advertising for world-famous brands Boss, Audi, Lexus, Dr. Pepper, and others. The actor follows his style, preferring business ones. There are white shirts or white t-shirts, tuxedos for events, sometimes a polo, or just a jacket with a t-shirt.
I like a blue.
Yeah.
You know, breaks up a bit.
So which of these are you going to be wearing this evening, do you think?
I reckon this one here because of the, what are these fancy black diamonds they are.
Chris lives in a cool mansion on Byron Bay, but despite this, he is not particularly fond of expensive cars. His permanent car is an Acura MDX. According to some reports, he has an Audi Q7, a Cadillac SRX, and a Cadillac Escalade, but mostly he is seen in an Acura. Chris likes to drive, which is not surprising after filming Rush, but he does it exclusively on tracks. So the actor participated in the Formula E race with the participation of only electric cars. In addition to the track, the actor likes to surf the waves on a board and sometimes does it together with his children. It's really easier to do this in Australia than in Hollywood, although not without difficulty.
Here you are surfing with your daughter. Look at the ominous clouds that you go, let's go out here, honey, this seems safe. And look at her on his back. That is impressive.
Yeah.
After appearing on the screen as Thor, Hemsworth's physique attracted the attention of thousands of fans. His training sessions were regularly discussed in the media. Then, Chris created the fitness center, where by purchasing a season ticket, the client gets access to sports nutrition, wellness, and exercise. In Australia, the actor follows football and actively supports the Western Bulldogs Football Club in the Australian Football League. He was the star of the AFL's 2014 Everything's Possible campaign, donating money for his participation to the Australian Childhood Foundation. Chris also starred in the AFL's 2017 commercial, I'd Like to See That. And recently, Chris Hemsworth was appointed a member of the Order of Australia in 2021 Queen's Birthday Honours. Chris Hemsworth showed by his own example what can be achieved if you really want to push yourself. Sometimes you can even become a god, even if it is mythical. He made his way to the top of Hollywood, built a beautiful house, made a family, and raised 3 children. But we are sure that Chris Hemsworth is only at the beginning of his long and successful journey. Chris became part of one of the most popular movie franchises, Marvel. But everything could have been different, and the MCU would have been completely different if a series of important and sometimes terrible events had not occurred in the world.